Hey, everybody, before we get into today's episode of The Watch, where we'll be talking about The Last of Us episode 2, as well as some stuff on Your Friends and Neighbors, just want to mention that Andy and I will be back on this feed tomorrow night to talk about the first 3 episodes of Andor broadly, but more importantly, to be joined by Tony Gilroy, the creator of Andor and one of our favorite screenwriters of all time. Tony has been on the pod a couple of times and is always an incredible interview, and he was so thoughtful and interesting in talking about this second season of Andor. So please make sure you keep your eye on your feeds tomorrow night for that Tony Gilroy interview. Let's get into today's show.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, he won't be visiting Jackson anytime soon. It's Andy Greenwald!
Let me begin by saying I thought the new promo campaign for No Laying Up has gone too far.
Lots of golf jokes coming. That's
Yeah?
why I wore the Masters
You wore the hat.
We are going to jump right into our Last of Us episode 2 reactions. I will say that we will be spoiling going forward from this very second.
Okay.
I will also say, just to be the nice guy that I am,
You are.
I probably will casually mention other momentous episodes throughout television history.
Oh, so you might just spoil everything.
No, I'm going to try and be mindful about specifics,
Wow.
but I think when we refer to, say, other things that Mark Mylod has done in his directorial career, we may refer to other character deaths, we may refer to momentous occasions. Honestly, I assume if you watched last night and you're listening to us and you listen to The Watch, you probably watched Game of Thrones.
Huh. That'd be interesting to find out if there's some people that didn't.
Maybe
but
you
okay.
watched Succession, I hope, you know?
I would also say, because I'm more concerned about this, if you'd like to know some of our just regular Monday morning bants and Chris's thoughts about Easter weekend, just skip forward about 15, 20 minutes.
15, 20? This is a momentous episode of television, man.
We can knock it out.
All right.
No, I'm just- okay, maybe longer.
Well,
the time codes
sir,
will be in there.
You have the honors. Andy, we're going to talk about this episode, Through the Valley. It was written by Craig Mazin. It was directed by Mark Mylod, as I referred to earlier. Obviously, this is an episode where Abby gets her revenge and the Horde breaches Jackson. So two things that I think on any other show in any other moment would be penultimate or season finale moments crushed into one episode.
Yeah.
I guess I want to start with you.
Thank you.
Because A, you've been a little bit immune to the cordyceps crawling all over my body.
Once
here.
bitten, twice shy.
No, but like you've been a little bit immune to some of the show's charms, and this is obviously a takeout, like put it on the mantle, put it on the shelf episode.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
Before I answer in full, I do want to say, completely unspoiled.
Yes,
I knew
congratulations.
Nothing.
Yeah, it must have been cool.
It was pretty lucky, pretty great.
Yeah.
Things are really breaking my way, just as an American. I mean, there was some ambient. People don't like the Abby character.
That's what I was telling you.
canonically.
Yeah, I think I may have been the ambient, like.
Well, that, and then also other ambient was like any complaints about, boy, they're really just going to settle in to
Jackson.
to ski life is probably premature.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind having that sense.
Cool. Did you guys have a great New Year's Eve?
What did you
Great show.
Oh, I feel like the year doesn't start till February. Am I right?
Have you noticed nobody in California will return my calls until...
Oh, now it's Sundance? Try January, goes on forever. So that was cool for me, and I would hope cool for many other people who weren't spoiled and don't play video games. I don't mean this to be in any way like a half compliment when I say that this was on a craftsmanship, on an aesthetic, on a technical level. This was TV on the highest possible order.
Yep.
It was outrageous. It was so brilliantly directed. And yes, I'm saying this not just because we are fans of Mark Mylod. I will disclose that I've been working with Mark Mylod. He is awesome and a genius. And also, just sidebar, the least director energy of any major league director I've ever been around. He's a nice guy who is really good at doing the mise en scène for mass death.
Can I ask you a question? I was going to save this
Yeah.
for later in the conversation, but What do you think makes him, not necessarily because he's such a great guy to have tea with, but like what makes him such a good director? Because he is obviously this chameleonic presence throughout the last 10 years or so of television.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to realize that his first producing directing gig, meaning the one that he was like part of the team for the show across the season, was Entourage. Like,
I don't think I knew that.
Yes, that was what brought him to LA for the first time.
What an interesting entree.
I know. I know.
Our little town here, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, what
I was trying to kind of develop like not a theory of Mylod or an understanding of his aesthetic, but I think the reason why I like him so much is that he's a throwback, not a throwback, but I think he reminds me of film directors like Sidney Pollack or Mike Nichols, who does what's needed because the material demands a certain approach. Now, you could say Mark Mylod is very good at directing handheld. So like, I feel like when there are moments where we're inside of a character's perspective, or he's trying to unnerve the audience. Obviously, Succession uses handheld almost exclusively, it feels like.
Yeah, he kind of created the visual language or mastered the visual language of that show.
But he brought a little bit of that, I thought like compared to the first episode that Mason directed, this one feels a lot more jittery and for good reason. But then he also has in his bag, I can direct 6,000 zombies running after one person down a mountain. And, that is just an incredible array of talents.
Yeah, I think what you said hits the nail on the head and what makes him rare in this day and age, and maybe it was less rare in the past, but I think that he does exactly what's needed for the project. And I think that often in TV, which is really kind of an independent contractor, freelance, jack of all trades kind of industry for directors.
Yeah.
That can be a really useful thing that you can just show up and get your shots and get out of there, but it doesn't really make for it makes for competence, not always excellence, and it definitely doesn't always make for like visual like show off.
It's not necessarily
distinction.
memorable. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And somehow he is able to do that. And I've not been on set with him, so I can't speak to like his technical stuff, which is clearly at an elite level, having done this for Thrones, having done this for Shameless, having done this for The Menu, Succession, and now this. But what I can say about him, from having been around him, is that I don't remember any director being as warmly welcome in a writer's room, let's say, just in terms of his ability to listen and share and to get granularly into the storytelling to a degree that I have to assume makes it possible then to dunk on everybody once you're actually on set that day. So I'm blown away by it. And I couldn't get over the scale of the episode, the size of it, the expense of it, but the money well spent in terms of where to put the camera. And when you're talking about like the Jackson assault, like being able to follow characters within that story and understand the scale of it and sort of modulate the hopelessness of it, I thought was just really, really remarkable.
It's also really good writing. I mean, like the opening Maria and Tommy scene, Tommy's speech to the town.
Yeah,
where he's like,
"I'm a Ramirez guy now." By the way, on the off
chance that there's a huge invasion by the Horde, we're gonna like basically funnel them down Main Street so that we have high ground. We're gonna send all the women and children into the basements, and then we're gonna fortify the basements. So it's like everything kind of was laid out. Now, obviously, when he's doing that speech, you're just like, "Oh, well, then this obviously will go bad today." But that being said, I thought, like you said, you were just able to see and feel exactly where this action was happening, even down to the point where Tommy is like going head to head with I don't know what the hell that thing was, the berserker kind of.
I have some notes on that. I have some questions.
Main dude, main mushroom. I kind of knew where that was, like that it was on a side street. It was on
So all of that said, I also think it's really, we have to commend the show for going for it. Like one of the, we talk about this constantly. And I was talking about it last week with Dope Thief, this idea that like one of the main challenges to making good TV is knowing the right shaped bucket for your story. And sometimes it's a 2-hour bucket and sometimes it's an 8-hour bucket. And when you mix that up, not great things happen. The other factor that is worth putting into that conversation is speed of story. Like how, when you hit the gas, when you pump the brakes, when to delay, and when to just go for it. And I'm sure that there were conversations, and I'm sure there were notes, and I'm sure there were questions about how quickly do we hit this plot point that, as we experienced with Game of Thrones, viewers or players in this case knew was coming. But also we have a star who is suddenly one of the most bankable stars in the world and most recognizable faces and a beloved actor. And are we ready to do this soon into the second season? Could we extend it? Could we have this
based on the amount of movies he's in, I think Pedro Pascal is ready.
I have a lot of comments about that, so please let me cook in about 10 minutes. All I'm saying is the biggest spoiler was my guy's IMDb page since 2023. 10 movies since 2024. Yeah. So I think that really was the tell that it was hiding in plain sight.
Right.
Anyway, they went for it, obviously.
Yes.
And I think that it was thrilling, it was earned, and I was excited to sort of re-access that part of my TV watching lizard brain, which does I don't know if you ever have this, but sometimes I find my reactive audience brain getting conservative in real time. Like clearly his story is over in that moment. Abby has been very clear.
Oh, but you're like, could Ellie come crashing through the window and save him? Yes.
The hope and the manipulation of the hope by the creators, not in a bad way, but in an artful storyteller way. Could he find a way to delay? Could he say the right thing that would give them pause? Will her crew of super woke TikTok army kids
step in and do the right thing?
Step in, yeah. The brain does that.
Yeah.
And I think good storytellers, which Mason clearly is, know that our brain is doing that and then denies us that hope in a way. So there was a moment when the more cynical person who does this for a living, like and watches TV for a living at this point, was like, oh, they're doing this. I see it. I respect it. But the lizard brain hope remains, and I like that collision. It's been a while.
It's the reverse of every time you watch Don Draper driving Sally anywhere, and you were like, oh no, please don't turn off the road.
Yes.
It's like, they're not going to have him kill his daughter and himself in a car,
In episode 4 of season 5.
I love this episode. I knew it was coming. I was pretty sure it was coming.
You were loose with the Google.
Well, I think I was very excited for Caitlin Deaver's casting. And so any engagement with that casting news inevitably led to lots of people being like, protect Caitlin Deaver at all costs. This is a very controversial character within the realm of the game.
Is Deaver Fever still on Tumblr?
Deaver
have you moved it to Substack?
Deaver Fever is going straight to Blogspot.
I see.
And I think that I've been fascinated with the writing about, like Nicholas Quah wrote about this, but like a lot of the sort of discourse around some of the ideas about the adaptation process of this TV show, video game to TV show. Now, often, like when you have something, I don't know, what's a good example of something like, this is stupid, but Tomb Raider or something like that, where you're like, essentially like, it's a first-person shooter that you're kind of moving through a world and like it's a very identifiable main character. That's the avatar for the player. Last of Us, apparently, I've never played it, moves POV around. So one of the reasons why Abby is such a complicated character in the game is that you play as Abby when Last of Us Part 2 came out. Like you're playing as Abby, and I guess I don't know this for 1,000% sure, but like you kill Joel. Like you're forced to kind of live both sides of this kind of issue that they've got at the heart of, is Abby doing something right? Is Abby doing the right thing? Did Joel do the right thing for these two choices that these people made at various points in their life?
Wow. That's like you with all your steel stocks. You're like, this is bad for the world. But I gotta say, maybe it's time to take some medicine.
So there was that. I felt while I was watching it, we got to come up with the German word for something bad is going to happen or something big is going to happen on this episode of TV. It's basically the hair on your arm stand up, but I have felt that a couple of times. Even though I knew something was happening, there was just too much buzz about this episode. I don't think I understood that it was going to be paired with this invasion of Jackson, which is apparently a show invention and is also like,
it's cool.
About like kind of wiping the entire whiteboard clean of this series. I was thinking a lot, obviously, about Reigns of Castamere while I was watching it, because people were like,
and that's the Red Wedding
Last
episode.
of Us just had its Red Wedding episode. And was kind of fascinated by the fact that Reigns of Castamere happens 29 hours into Game of Thrones.
That's really hard to remember.
And how much TV has changed since then.
That was the day Game of Thrones became president.
But it's like Game of Thrones introduced this idea that nothing is sacred, that there aren't these sort of fixed identities within shows of like, this is obviously the guy who's going to lead the show for the 10 years that it's on. That they taught us that early on.
They taught us that with Ned.
But I don't think I was prepared. And it was also a different time on social media and a different time in terms of like how much time people were spending online, where you could blissfully be unaware of what happens in Reigns of Castamere, what happens at the Red Wedding. There's also a level of shock that's attendant that comes with being with these people for 30 hours.
Right.
That's a little different for being with them for 11, I think, which is the case with Last of Us, or however many episodes it's been. You know, I think it's, how many episodes of that first season? This is one of our great...
We love this. We have no idea. In fact, sadly, there's no way for us to know.
10 or 11 hours or whatever it is, that's how long we've been with Joel. And it's a lot different than the relationship to some of the people who perished in Red Wedding. It's not a qualitative judgment. It's just an observation.
Now, I would say that that's one of the things that makes HBO really good at what it does institutionally, because that, and it also reinforces why casting Pedro Pascal was so important retroactively. I'm sure people noted this at the time who'd played the game. You're casting someone who has baked-in familiarity, audience goodwill, carries himself on screen, and when you see him, it's charisma, it's kindness. You'd follow him, you trust him. You don't have to do the legwork to get him to a place where you believe in him. You do from the beginning, because frankly, you don't have enough time to establish it otherwise.
Right. I guess I want to talk a little bit about the scene, you know, and his death, because obviously it's one of the more...
Let's put the Jackson stuff on ice for a minute.
Yeah. Because I think it would probably be it's a very challenging scene to depict. Obviously it's torture, you know, both what's happening in that room, but also to watch. You have all this affection for Pascal as an actor and as like a persona. You also have I personally have a lot of affection for like Deaver.
Which is why you cast her.
Yeah. And what did you think of the way they staged it, and what did you think of the performances within it?
Two things to get out of the way, just two small bumps that I'll just get out of the way first. One is the show is testing, honestly, my credulity in terms of tiny bird-armed people being, you know, what's the fighting?
Krav Maga.
Yeah, that one. They can all do that.
You don't know what Krav Maga is? Come on.
After last week's Ronin/Ronin pronunciation debacle, I am retreating, frankly.
From what?
From foreign words for a while. Taking a break.
So are you trying to say that you don't know that Deaver had the ball speed to make that happen? The club head speed? No, once she went to the bag without the benefit of a caddy, but for a while she was just using the fisticuffs. Yes. I think she'd been training for a long time for that moment.
For this one moment.
Yeah.
I think the other aspect of it ties into something that I'll say at the end, which is just like, it's not just that the show is the best possible version of a zombie show. I think it is the best possible version of an absolutely nihilistic, dystopian anguish world that I don't love being in. And the sound of her beating a beloved character to death was not my favorite way to spend a Sunday. That said, I respect that they did it, you know, that they went for it. And it was the, you know, God, what am I thinking of? This recently, I was just watching something where someone says, like, would you rather have, like, was it one in the head or, like, bleed out slowly from the stomach? I don't know. I feel like that was a text you sent me, probably. some action
one of your
movie.
Other friends.
No. It doesn't matter. The point is, this was the headshot of super violent character death scenes. And I thought it was, like, to that degree, staged with the best, I don't know, level of respect.
I didn't think it was self-indulgent.
Yeah,
I didn't think that it ever it never crossed over into torture porn. I thought Deaver kept it really grounded. She had just the right amount of menace, but also vulnerability, and kind of always keeping it tethered to the emotional motivation for doing it in the first place.
And to that point, I mean, this is something that we talked about in a more spiritual sense when we were talking about White Lotus, but I think it's just actually a core tenet of effective drama. When you see the full chain of decision making, and you feel the weight of the butterfly wings in one episode, and then the storm hits wherever later. And you can sort of see the beat by beat logic to it, even if you don't agree with it, or even if you wish it wasn't so. So so doing it earlier, even though 5 years has passed in the show, but doing it earlier in the season really didn't allow either Joel or the audience to move past what he did in that Firefly hospital.
Yeah.
So you understand, as he did, that this was coming for him. And you understand in a way, I think, and Pascal played this really well, that all of this was one action in a way. And that saving this person who killed him was also part of the kind of dark symmetry of this post-apocalyptic world, right? That he was always going to be himself. And at the very end, there was nothing, he couldn't argue. Because it was him, he saved Ellie, he saved this girl. That is his nature, is to sometimes be quite violent if necessary to save the people he feels are worthy of being saved. And at the end of his road, he understood how he paved the road that he got there.
Loves die. I mean, many of the people he loves, he's watched die. And so he wasn't willing to let Ellie go. He knows what he did. He obviously is ashamed enough about it, or, knows how divisive it would be for it to be an open, for everybody to know, I made a choice to save Ellie, but possibly doom the rest of humanity if she indeed is this like miracle vaccine inside of her. That she has to die to give up. That being said, I thought Deaver was like the speech about lawlessness, and this
I noted that too.
Yeah, what did you think?
A little rich to be worried about lawlessness.
No, I think she was like, you're supposed to stick to even in these moments of like everything is falling apart and society is kind of dissolving, that there are things you don't do. And she's like, and now you've made me into you because I'm going to do that to you.
Right.
I liked that. I mean, it was a very effective piece of writing. I think it was
an effective piece of writing, and I thought it was really well played. And there was an element to it that I really, really liked, where it felt theatrical. Deaver, the way that she's performing this character, and I mean this as praise, I can sort of feel the consideration as to how she's modulating it. It feels like this scene and her scene in the beginning of the season premiere felt to me more like a soliloquy on stage. Not necessarily in the writing, although certainly you can make that case, but kind of in the way she seems to sort of savor the language, and she's not losing herself in the character. She's delivering the lines in a way. And this is maybe even a weird observation to make, but there's one moment when she's kneeling and she's delivering the lawlessness speech. And there's a cutaway to Pascal. And the way these things are cut up, we don't know if this is a live reaction shot to that, or they just had footage of him from a different take. But he seems receptive.
Yeah.
He's listening.
I agree.
It feels like an acting class in the sense that what your job in a scene when you're not delivering lines is to be present and to listen, even if you've heard it 100 times before. And I just had a moment of being, so then an hour later when I was reading a little bit about the episode and you see someone throws up, or I guess one of them had put on social, like a picture of them palling around on set.
Oh, and for a second I was like, what if the ex-Fireflies has socials?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Peace the fuck out, Jackson.
What's weird is that they still didn't shut down TikTok, even though the virus took over. In that moment, I'm like, this seems like they were very generous performers with each other and got along, and I made sense. Maybe that's a trite observation, but I felt like the speech was being delivered, but it was also being received, and that helped keep me in it, even though it was horrifying.
Do you feel like the horror of that moment was offset by balancing it with what was happening at Jackson? Like if it had just been cutaways back to Jackson and people are like, boy, we really got to check these pipes out.
Yeah.
Oof, I'm hungover. Seth, I hope you've really come to realize that homophobia has no place in this town. Like all over it, like just kind of moving through the like beats, and then also, but over here, Joel is getting killed by a 6-iron. Like,
side note, homophobic Seth's steak sandwiches reminds me of the Palestinian chicken episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, where it's just like, sure, he hates who I choose to love, but god damn, those sandwiches are good. They look, I didn't even see them, but they were like real thick cut, like butcher paper. I'm sorry, Seth. Like, your hateful ideology has no place here.
Court Street Grocer over
But
here.
seriously, but I can't kick you out of my kitchen.
Yeah.
Your Chick-fil-A, pretty good. You
Basically, there's another way to play this, and I think in the game, like I said, the show I think invents the idea of Jackson being invaded, at least contemporaneously with Joel's death. I think there's another way to play this that feels a lot more excruciating.
Oh, if it's just a one-on-one.
Joel has been captured for half an hour.
Yeah, no. I loved that part. And I also, again, this is...
Because meanwhile, you're kind of like, Joel's here, but I'm like, are the other guys okay? Like,
sometimes when you get into the weeds with like story structure, it is a little bit like when you read people say why Joe Madden was a really good baseball manager, of the Rays. It's like, well, he really, he hit the pitcher eighth. And I'm like, okay. So I don't want to get too far into that. But I do think that when you have the reps and the experience and certainly the budget and time to think about these things, you can be a much more effective puppeteer.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's that there's so much danger happening at once that our attention is split, our heart is split, and it's playing into a foreknowledge of audience's savviness that we know someone's not making it out of this episode.
Yes.
We know someone we care about. And you find yourself, again, in those edge of your couch moments, making these calculations, being like, okay, I could sacrifice Jesse and maybe, you throw in a Seth or whatever. And is that enough to get me out of this episode clean without losing one of the lead? And you start doing that. And I think that makes for a more engaging episodic experience.
I love the idea of you watching like Pascal try to like his fingers twitching as he tries to get up the last time and just being like, look,
listen,
that's a long rehab.
Yeah.
But if we believe in our sports science team and we can get him back on a horse by season 3.
I do have these questions of like, maybe this actually makes this show more like Paradise in the sense of like we pick who survives, but like Dr. Neil L. Atrache, the guy who like fixes everyone's knee tendons.
Yeah.
Let's save him because as soon as Abby shoots Joel the first time, I'm like, okay, well, he'll have a limp, but he's on horseback a lot. It'll be fine. For sure. Sure.
They let Ellie live, obviously.
Yes.
That they need to for the show.
Yes.
They also, technically, that was what Abby said. They're not going to hurt anybody. She's just going to kill Joel. So, like,
yes. Right.
Obviously, this kind of gets into where do we go from here? There's a couple of other moments from the show that I want to shout out, but like
within that group scene though, did you think Ellie was going to save the day? Did you think that?
I mean, but I also knew what was going to happen.
Right. As soon as she showed up,
because once you get like half spoiled, you're just like, well, now I want to know.
You do the full spoil.
Yeah. So I'm just like, I go to my sites.
Do you? Your black sites? Your rendition sites? What are you talking about? As soon as Ellie showed up, I was like, oh, he's dying.
Yeah.
Because they had to have one more scene together,
sure.
even if it was a little one-sided, I would say. I also thought that, I mean, I made a joke about Abby's paramilitary elite force, but there are some...
That's Danny Ramirez and yeah.
Well, no, Danny Ramirez is...
That's Gabriel Luna.
Who am I mixing up here?
Danny Ramirez is the guy with.
Oh yeah,
Abby.
Gabriel. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been swapping them for this whole episode. They're good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they're. I see now. I mean, the show is so well cast that I make a joke about it, but it was this episode that I realized that was Ariella Bearer in the group, who was one of the stars of How to Blow Up a Pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
And Marvel's Runaways back in the day. And I'm like, oh, okay, so
she's like the medical.
Yes.
Medics,
so I'm like, there are no weak spots. They are not like, well, we've run out of budget here. We're gonna
I think
skim.
it's really well cast,
So
and
I
also
liked,
each one of those people without a lot of dialogue is communicating a different response to what Abby is doing.
That's what I mean. And so you have that ability, and this is something that Mylod probably would speak about too. Like he could cut to those people and get what he needed to tell the story, 100%. And so. And then also it's it is in keeping with the storytelling language of the show of like more butterfly flaps, like, well, I just left you alive. So now the show continues. Right. I want to talk about where it goes from here, but I also just want to shout out, I feel like we've praised the individual people, but the scene where Abby falls down the mountain.
That's incredible. And the chain link fence is fucking
And the chase
insane.
to the chain link fence single-handedly caused me to wish to recant everything I said last week about being, maybe I don't need zombie shows. Oh. Still a little mushroom meat on that bone. That was so...
It's amazing to be you. Just to
I'm just fresh every day.
Chips go out, chips come right back in.
That's why I don't gamble. Just enjoy myself. Live.
I definitely think I'm getting 21 on this hand.
You know what I do? Live Moss.
Yeah.
That's how I do it. It was so awesome. It was riveting. It was cinematic. It was thrilling. It was so well shot. It was just like that. I don't know what kind of drones he's using or cranes, but like, yeah, okay. You're making the case for yourself and for all of it in such a cool way. In Jackson, I'm down with like fast mushroom zombies throwing themselves into stuff. Like, okay, I get that.
Yeah,
I see the terms of debate. I am a little less into Hulk smash mushroom monsters who do the thing.
They got that homie from Helm's Deep.
This is what I'm saying. All larger foes in fantasy, whether they are like giants, like 1/1 or whatever in GOT. Don't act like you don't know. We did an after show.
I remember 1/1. Yeah.
Wasn't he named after Eli Manning because George R. Martin's a Giants fan?
I don't know, but that's very funny if that's true.
What's up, Jason and Mal? Miss you guys. All big creatures, when they burst through the thing they're trying to get through and all their little guys run through, they all pause to flex a little bit. They all like pause to be like, "Rawr." I'm like,
in your war room, that's a red flag on a prospect.
Well, no, it's just like the guy.
You want a guy who's just like, I just did my job and I'm resetting, getting back into my stance.
When Jaden threw the Hail Mary and there was the Bears cornerback who was just like waving to the crowd, like there'll be time to showboat later. Secure Jackson.
Yeah.
Also, you have no brain. You're an animated fungus.
Well, that guy had the brain. I thought that guy was he was sort of Ray Lewis, like he was setting.
He had the green dot?
Yeah.
He was setting the coverages? I mean, he was.
Because
he was
they all went left when he went left, right?
True. And also
I think when he gets finally incinerated, that's when people, they all lose a little bit of their edge,
Oh.
And Jackson they get a leg up on them.
When Gabriel Luna's just like, I want you.
Yes.
The guy's like, me? And then he follows him. I just felt a little too...
I can't believe Craig Mazin rejected your writing packet to be the dialogue guy for the head mushroom.
I could have been...
Me?
Well, like, when they do the Guardians of the Galaxy... When they do the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, Bradley Cooper is not on set, right?
Yeah,
like, Sean Gunn's just like, this is what a raccoon would do. I could have been that guy. Except I don't like the cold. And I don't like zombies. And I'm busy. But other than that... No, I just feel like we've only had a week to get used to the idea that some of these shrooms are thinking.
Well, we only had 15 minutes to get used to the idea that there were thousands of them buried underneath dead bodies in the mountains.
It's really true. And then less than that, actually, they say like, hey, some fun fact we've discovered. They didn't even show us that.
Like maybe they should have done less bantering on patrol and more like, hey, check out that frozen ground. Make sure it's frozen.
Yeah, if we run back the tape, like when there is the sort of like, Truth and Reconciliation Committee about what happened at Jackson, I feel like they're like
the foreign report.
They're very credulous of, that would be you. They're very credulous of like many, many zombies hiding under dead zombies. But when Ellie is just like, I personally witnessed a smart zombie, they're like, come on.
I think they're more just like, we got to get through New Year's Eve and then we'll worry about this.
No, in this episode, Jesse's like, good morning, please kiss my girlfriend, no problem, but stop telling lies.
I think he was like, you're just making people really like wound up about this.
Yeah, but then like a minute later, the captains of the town are just like, hypothetically, bear with me.
Let's just say,
let's play this out.
Ray Lewis comes storming through.
No bad. Ray Lewis and the entire Legion of Boom, different team, I know. Riddle me this, guys. Let's just play this out. No bad ideas. Okay, so here's the only other thing I want to say about. Well, okay, I have a couple less things. One, just shout out Pedro Pascal, who has figured out how to stay nimble in this economy to a degree we've never seen before. What I mean is he is nominally the star of one of inarguably the biggest shows in television. it was a 10-hour commitment. He was also the star of one of the other biggest shows of the last 10 years, Mandalorian. It was arguably a 35-minute commitment and then a couple hours in a voice booth. Right? He is the star of the only Star Wars movie currently on the schedule. Will he appear in the movie?
Yeah.
TBD. It made me shout out.
He was also in Triple Frontier.
Well, do you want to take do you want to take the mic for a minute?
He just does great work.
He does great work. It made me want to shout out.
I missed the Netflix Pedro era.
Oh, when he was just showing up and stuff?
No, he was just Narcos and he was
he's in Freaky Tales. Like, this guy likes to work.
Yeah.
But it did make me want to shout out to the god Beatrice Straight, who I know you know, and the rest of the Rewatchables crew, is the woman who won an Oscar for delivering a 5-minute monologue in Network.
Oh, yeah.
5 minutes is actually only 24 minutes less than Pedro Pascal appeared on screen in Game of Thrones.
I feel like Zach Lowe's arrival at The Ringer has really made us more numbers oriented.
I'm crunching numbers. I'm crushing tape. That seems to work here. I'm just trying to get noticed. But like, it is an incredible run. I mean, Oberyn Martell is so memorable, also died so terribly in a shocking way. 29 minutes of screen time. And now he's my Reed Richards. I don't know if he's yours, but it did make me think. I wouldn't, if I was John Krasinski, I wouldn't give up hope. You know what I mean? Pascal's here for a good time, not a long time in these movies.
What do you mean? Krasinski,
maybe there's another Mr. Fantastic coming in another universe. Maybe that's the twist. You know, it's possible. He is very, very...
Well, why not two of them? You know?
Two versions of the same hero in one cinematic universe, Chris. Last thing about this. Let me just do a little temperature check for you on the rest of us, the rest of The Last of Us, because it's a different proposition now.
Is this the going forward
Yes.
question? Okay, I have a way into this.
Okay.
A lot of things are obviously going to get swept off the table now because Jackson is diminished, I would say. Probably not much of a stronghold.
It's a big cleanup crew, too.
Presumably, Abby and the ex-Fireflies are on their way back to Seattle, I guess. You know, the WLF patch on their backpack, talking a little bit about, you know, she's like, I wouldn't go to Seattle if I were you, but you're not going to have that problem.
They said some stuff. They said too much.
I would say that I wonder whether there is going to be any, obviously, ramifications. Ellie has now sworn a blood oath to kill Abby anyway.
Yeah.
But whether there are still any ramifications about the secret. The secret being that Ellie, the Fireflies wanted to sacrifice Ellie for the greater good.
Yeah.
And Joel saved Ellie because one life matters.
Right. Did they know?
Yeah, I was curious about that. Did everybody in the room, does Abby know? Does Abby know that the dad was about to kill a little girl?
See, that was the one unsaid thing.
Because it's kind of like you killed an innocent doctor, and I get it. I get, like, broadly what she's saying.
Okay, RFK Jr.
But they're like, she's like making this big, I think there's some nuance to the story at least.
Yeah, I was curious your take on that because you led our conversation last week with like, is Joel biting his tongue too much for the purposes of drama? I mean, like, and in this case,
yes.
In this case, I think the show did an effective thing where what he does say is get on with it.
Yes, but he could have said your dad had a scalpel in his hand and was about to kill a 14-year-old girl, so I shot him in the head.
Well, but I think that in this particular example, I think that it's justifiable because what the show did over the course of the 90 minutes preceding that moment was establish that Joel is in emotional agony and is trapped with this and believes on some level he deserves punishment. Mm-hmm. And so he was open to that punishment arriving. Maybe not with that particular handicap on that par course of his face.
It seemed like everybody was also moving on from, like, he's stuck, you know, tinkering with like little gadgets in his workshop and overseeing sewage replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Ellie has moved on.
Not pretty.
People are moving on. Yeah.
But you are right in that I do wonder what they thought was going on and what the goal was, because clearly their medical capacity has been diminished by his actions, but if they knew that it was all for the girl who they have now just cracked a couple of her ribs and left her, why would they do that? I don't think they knew that, right? And I don't know why that is, and maybe that'll be explored.
And who will talk? And you know, who's going to talk? I assume Tommy knew?
I don't remember. what Tommy knew or didn't know.
I ask because does this create a world where this secret still matters? You know, does that secret have any weight anymore? And then also, like, I think it's a very exciting proposition. One thing that's really invigorating about this show is even if it's pretty heavy to watch, it moves so much. And like you said, you were a little worried that we were about to settle into après-ski for the entire season.
Right.
Obviously now, Ellie is probably going to recover and now be like, I'm going to follow these people. I saw this patch. Do you know what this means? Yeah, you know, like I imagine Dina will go with her.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, this is the limit of like game spoilers that I had, so I'm very curious about how much time we spend. Are we cutting back and forth between Abby and Ellie? Like, do we see a whole other part of the country through other characters? It's
also worth noting that the show is renewed. So whatever closure we're seeking is likely not to come this season. But
I kind of don't want it. I don't want closure. I want to go all over the place.
Right. I guess I'm saying I don't know what the shape of the show will be through the remainder of the season or what the shape of the show ultimately will be because I don't really know how long the road goes. I'll hang my hat on the concern peg and just say it is a very different proposition. I have not, in the way that the Ellie character has been written and performed thus far, it has been mostly reactive. Obviously, the character is young and is more of in the very beginning. She is the package that has to be delivered, and the weight fell on Joel's decision making and charisma and all that. Craig Mazin knows what he's doing, so I think that there's probably going to be an opportunity in a few weeks' time to say, we were looking at the larger structure wrong or maybe prematurely, and that Ellie's development as a person and as a leader and as a hero of a show was in process here. Mm-hmm. This is the complaints of her being like a petulant teen in last week's episode was intentional because that was the teenage adolescence of the character in a way.
Right.
And that there'll be a different version going forward. I think that's very possible. I have some doubts about it, about the show being hung entirely on that character as performed thus far.
More Abby. That's the answer.
I think it's more Abby.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's also the calculation that the game made that people have issues with, like because that, as you said, that apparently she is a playable character. I think that's cool. And that's a dynamic we haven't seen in these types of shows.
What do you think happens to all the menswear stores that have flannel-lined wax trucker jackets in stock?
I would genuinely watch a web series about Tommy.
A web series?
Well, it's not going to be like main content, you know what I mean? But maybe like an expansion pack for the video game of life of Tommy and his pals scouring the Mountain West, all the boot barns in the Mountain West. You know what I mean? Like all the REI outlets just to get the most beautiful all-weather gear and then also all of the ammunition. I mean, it doesn't matter. And also you can't be like, are you going to run out of guns and ammo in America?
Yeah.
Not really going to happen. But they were quite free with it. When they were dumping fire on them.
They have all the best houses. They're like a 7-Eleven full of weed.
Yeah.
You know, all the guns in the world.
Did you see there was a CVS? And you know what? I bet toothpaste wasn't under lock and key there. So I'm saying there are upsides to this dystopia. I love all the clothes. I do wonder about, and I know they're on TV, but it's like, what's the girl's name? The Ellie's girlfriend character who gets this Dina. If Dina gets frostbite in this weather, Joel could put on a hat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Right.
You're a hat guy.
I am. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't catch me dead outside in a blizzard without a knit beanie.
I could barely make it through like a London autumn without a hat. The ears get cold. You know what I mean?
All right. Well,
wild.
Well done to that show.
Well done to that show.
Talk a little bit about your friends and neighbors.
I continue to feel like at the end of that episode, I was like, absolutely elite. Also, I really don't want to spend my Sunday nights like this. Genuinely, like I feel like especially at this moment in the world, like it is a bad, dark, violent place to be in, and I don't love that. But what I do love is HBO being like, Sunday nights, better tune in. I like that. And I like the chatter. I like the excitement.
Yeah.
And I like the focus. I like grabbing focus of the culture and be like, no, pay attention to this. We're going to do something.
It's really impressive to see when TV spends in the right places and really invests in something, how captivating it can still be. You know, I think it's a strange biggest show on TV. I don't know how to like geolocate why that is, aside from like obviously people love post-apocalyptic dystopian stories. People have a very big investment in this video game. Perhaps as we're learning from the success of Minecraft, people have way more investment in video games than we could possibly have even calculated.
Than we could, but I think other people are less surprised.
Obviously examples like Halo, where it's like that did not set the world on fire, but there are generations of people for whom video games are their stories. You know, these are the like sacred texts that they grew up on, and Hollywood seems to be noticing. So, I mean, if they're on this level, if they're on the level of Minecraft, then so be it.
For what it's worth, and this might be a future conversation.
I saw Katzenberg and Jack Black at the Lakers game, by the way.
Did you?
Yeah, just lording it up.
Were they just
laughing? Just
chicken jockeying? Is that what they were doing? Kaya left. Kaya's more online than us. She knows.
I refuse to find out anything about it. I'm very happy for its success.
But it's interesting. You bring up Halo, which was like, that was our Last of Us. But
oh my God, dude.
But for what it's worth, that was a game in which the
Sweet Master Chief.
But literally not that. The experience was us listening to like Wu-Tang Clan albums and playing that game and having fun. I don't think any of us were like, oh, if only Cortana could secure the ring world.
That was the problem.
And then when they make the movie or the TV show about it, it's like slavishly devoted to a story that
you would skip the cutscenes of.
Exactly that. And so
like, I want to kill the horde.
The successful content is, I think, these types of games that missed us completely that are crafted with the level and thoughtfulness, you know, it does seem of a lot of Hollywood content, or certain things that are just so culturally transcendent, like everybody knows Mario. So a movie that sort of tries to be like, isn't this fun to be in Mario, like is going to do really well with kids.
I'll leave you with this. If this show successfully does what I understand the video game does, which is force the audience to put themselves in Abby's POV.
Right.
And if this show now makes Caitlin Deaver 55%, 50% of the show and forces viewers to spend time with and empathize and ultimately love a character that killed Zaddy, that's going to be a major accomplishment. That's really cool that they're going to be if they're able to pull that off.
It's going to help ad sales of your fan site too.
What's my fan site?
Deaver Fever.
Oh, yeah. It makes it sound worse than it is.
When I say fan site?
Yeah.
Okay, I retract.
It's more like a meteorological kind of like we're just keeping an eye on the fronts, you know?
Oh.
The pressure systems.
Oh, like the Is Joel Embiid Hurt Tonight website? It just provides information?
Yeah. I was going to start another one for the Rockets called HeThoughtItWasHim.com. I talked about this with Bill, where it was like every night a different Rocket is like, I'm him. And it's like, it doesn't really work out.
You can't just...
So last night it was Fred VanVleet. And he was like 2 for 16.
And it wasn't. Wow.
I want to talk about your friends and neighbors.
Yeah.
Briefly. Sorry we didn't alert people at the beginning of the episode, but you'll figure it out.
This is really... Nobody does it like us. You know that?
I mean, I could go back and be like, and also stick around for some incredible friends and neighbors chat. I thought this episode was the continued TV seriesification of the show, which I think is completely fine because I find it to be a soothing balm to watch. I increasingly, when I watch the show, think of Billions. I think of all of the like little nooks and crannies it's like enjoying burrowing itself into in this world. You know, obviously, we just talked about like the amount of money Last of Us must have cost. I think you can see it with Friends and Neighbors as well, as they build out the kind of universe of stuff that that Coop visits with any regularity. And I was like, I don't know how they did this, but like Nick's house is a fully realized like dwelling and realm, as is Amanda Pete's house, as is Olivia Munn's place.
So this is legitimate. Shout out location scouting. It's
location scouting, but it's also like, it's the same sensation you get from watching Taxi, where you're like, now I'm in this room. Now I'm in this room. But like watching a shot on set show where the production winds up becoming a character because it's so familiar. It's the friend's living room. It's Cheers, but they're doing it with like 15 mansions throughout Connecticut or Long Island or wherever they shot this thing. And
I think Westchester. I think they're up there.
Oh, well, the Billions piece that I was going to mention is just, I always thought like there was an initial kind of like twisty, you know, a DA or an attorney general and a master of industry, and they're on a collision course, and who only one can win. But then it was like also, what if he tries to buy the Yankees? And also like he loves Pearl Jam, and also like we have like a whole plot line about like the sexual kinks of everybody involved, and it was like basically created to run on the long term.
It's the Showtime model.
Yeah, and I feel like I can hear notes of that in Friends and Neighbors, because even though you've got this very tight premise that has like a little bit of a ticking clock, because it's like, is he going to get caught?
Yep.
You also have an increasingly wide gallery of characters who are getting more and more grace notes.
It's getting wider and
getting wider.
Not necessarily deeper.
So we're like a dozen people into this show on the third episode of like, oh, okay, so now.
So I think my first, I think that's very well observed. And I think my response is actually appropriate to what you were saying. We may have to recalibrate ourselves, because it has been a long time since we've engaged with a show that was this open-ended with this much road promise to it. This is, in many ways, the opposite of a Last of Us conversation, because there are no major plot points that are just preset, that they are writing to and then writing from. That's very exciting, and it's one of the reasons
why. Except for
what
happens in the first scene of the flash forward.
Right, but they created that, so you're right about that. Yeah. But so I want to reiterate my feeling after watching the first two, which was very positive, and being like, it's kind of fun and exciting. But part of fun and exciting with a long-running show, or a hopefully long-running show, is there's going to be some bumps along the way. They are going to have to. I can't sit here and say I love it when you discover Aaron Paul, that you don't want to kill him off, in a show, and these little things that you just these characters are good together. We'll write to their chemistry. I was like, Aaron
Paul, is that like a Wake Forest guard that the Sixers are looking at? Like,
a 10-day contract guy. I really think he could be a part of the rotation next year. Shout out Daryl. Yeah, I can't say like the best things of TV come from those happy in the moment accidents, and then not tolerate the unhappy accidents or things that maybe aren't playing out that then the writers can adjust from. That is a very, very long way of caveating this fact that I thought this was generally a bad episode of TV. It doesn't mean the show is bad. It doesn't mean that you need episodes like this to figure stuff out. But I thought that like to be on the third episode and to already be doing what's the wife plot? She's got bugs. That seemed early. You know what I mean? That seemed a little early.
It's a metaphor.
What?
It's her past life. It's still on the walls. The wife still there.
The wife metaphor plot, I feel like we could have probably some other stuff for her to be doing first. Similarly, just the machinations of like guys' night and girls' night to get the people fighting each other. Like, yeah, you could sort of see, you could feel Jonathan Tropper and the creative team. They're wrangling, they're getting their arms around what kind of show it's going to be, and that's totally reasonable. But it made for a tougher watch. And one of the and then my attention goes a gear lower, where I'm like, okay, they're figuring it out this episode. So then you start paying attention to the stuff that you might otherwise not nitpick, because the momentum of the A plot is so strong. And then on that level, it's things like, what is the show's attitude towards this kind of ultra wealthy suburban ennui?
Well, I think it's trying to have it both ways.
I think it's trying to have it both ways, and I feel like makes sense, and it's safe, and it's Apple's notes early, but I would like it to ultimately have an opinion, because
I don't care.
I kind of do, because it feels soft without it. Like, it's not.
Well, I think that in interviews, Ham has described it as a criticism or a critique of like mass consumption on this level.
But it's not. So far, it's a critique of, it really is boring to only talk about whiskey. It's not actually. So this is a premature moment to bring up this argument. But when it gets a little soft, that's when I start to notice it. Again, the show is snapping into place.
Yes.
And that is totally fine. The only other note of criticism that I'd like to bring up is, I do think that, you know how you've You had volunteered years ago, and I feel like more people should have taken you up on this, that you would be a filmed basketball consultant.
I mean,
for shows like, and I'm not even talking about the basketball in this, but you were, Mr. Robot season 2 had a pickup game that, drew some criticism from you. And you were like, let me just see the tape. Let me just walk the court.
Let me just cast the guys. Like,
Okay.
you can go into most gyms and just find like 10 dudes who could probably like stand in the right place camera-wise, like for blocking, and like they'll be able to dribble.
Is Russillo available?
No, but I remain dedicated to the idea that you cast basketball players who can act rather than actors who pretend like they can play basketball.
Fantastic point.
Yeah.
What I would like to suggest is that there should also be, and you'd have to structure it differently because of child labor laws, but I do think you need a teen or tween on call when you are writing a show that involves contemporary teens or tweens. Because I held my tongue last week on mic, I think.
So
when
brave.
I am brave, thank you. When they cut to the 15-year-old's bedroom, and the only thing in his bedroom was an artfully hung, perfectly angled poster for the French electro act M83.
Yes.
I was like, okay.
But
so that's art direction.
Bloghouse is coming back.
But just
like,
okay.
The sleazy aughts are back.
Okay, Pitchfork. Let me just say
that dude has Cobra Snake on the Wayback Machine.
That I'm willing to accept any of that.
Yeah.
I draw the line at a drug-addled teenage house party in the year of our Lord 2025 being brought to a absolute riveting, like silent standstill by a high school cover band performing Matthew Sweet's Sick of Myself. One of the great songs. But respectfully, show me the tape. Show me the 15-year-old in 2025 who's just like,
I have been
I got
surprised by the popularity of alt rock. Like 90s alternative rock hits that have just been coming back. I feel like that style of music is very popular right now.
This is, by the way, this is like every political Substack I have where people are like, the mood among young people is strong. They are taking to the streets.
When you hear younger bands, they're talking about like, oh, we really wanted it to sound like Teenage Fan Club or whatever.
No, totally. Like the band I like, Mama, just sounds like what if Helium, Breeders, and Third Eye Blind, but now? I'm like, great. I love this formula.
Right.
But
they're in their 20s. So would a 15-year-old be playing Matthew Sweet's power pop anthem?
While wearing a Cure t-shirt?
Yes.
I think we all wish that's the case. But
Jonathan Trauber does, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't mind also, like a lot of the creative arts are fantasy, right? Even if they don't involve a giant named 1-1. Like I have a fantasy that my children might one day like a song I like. One day they might, and maybe in a future screenplay.
Can I ask you just to get personal?
Please, it's about time.
That matters to you?
No, but it would feel good once.
Yeah.
I want them to have their own.
Because I'm trying to remember,
taste.
like I think my parents' love of the Beatles actually is one of the original reasons why I'm probably more of a Stones person.
Yeah, I don't
I just think you're always going to be in opposition to their tastes.
Okay, but here I completely agree. But I also think, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this, so I'm closing the laptop and let's really talk about this. I think there's a fine line because I do want them to. I
don't need my laptop either.
No, these
are your kids.
What are you playing? Have you just been texting them?
I'm updating D for Fever.
I think that I want them to have their own distinct taste, but I also don't want my opinions and taste to be a completely closed circuit. Because, for example, like at my house growing up, my father liked the music that he liked, and it was very avant-garde classical, which I don't have any opinion about. But sometimes I'm like, I wonder if he had been like, I like this because of these reasons, I would have been like, oh, that's interesting. That shows like a whatever. And then maybe I also wouldn't have spent not insignificant parts of my high school life being like, Dad, this is Automatic for the People. It's by REM. I feel like Find the River is a lovely, there's a folk tradition to this song that maybe you'd appreciate.
Why are you doing your dad as you as a teenager talking
Because that's
to
how
your
I
dad.
would address him. The only artist that he ever liked was Pulp. Of all the bands that I liked, he's like, oh, there's a clever class consciousness at play.
And now you bring that same energy to
the
your
podcast. Yes.
When you're watching.
When I'm criticizing your friends and neighbors.
A TV show made by a technology company.
100% the case.
Yeah.
But anyway, to answer your question, no, I do not force my children to listen to Matthew Sweet albums, not even Girlfriend.
Okay.
But it would be cool, but it's not up to me.
I think that you will find, hopefully, that they, as they get older, will maybe embrace more of your film tastes, but music is a really I think it's a very possessive and oppositional kind of passion.
I think
younger.
it historically is. I do think that the avenues towards discovering oppositional tastes are choked now.
Do you?
I do. I do think that, and also just generally a generational shift in terms of feelings about popularity has changed. You know, like for us, like popular things were met with some degree of skepticism.
If only they could hear Matthew Sweet.
If only they could hear this. If only they could appreciate Jarvis Cocker's incisive observations about entrenched class culture. No, I mean, I just think that I like a lot of pop music. But I think there's other stuff out there too.
Yeah. Didn't see you at the Circle Pit at Deaf Heaven this weekend, so.
Brother, I can't believe you dodged our Monday banter on a weekend when you...
I did not. You didn't see me in the Circle Pit either. I was viewing from a high ground.
But our listeners deserve to know that in one calendar day, in 2025, you went from a Lakers playoff game to a Deaf Heaven concert that began at 10. Okay?
Yeah.
That is our Iron Man.
It was pushing the limits.
I can't believe you did that.
When you see guys and they're like, they've done, they're finishing Tour de France and they've just done the Pyrenees and they're just like, I don't know if I've got anything left. That was me as I was walking through downtown Los Angeles on my way to the Bellagio.
Were you able to change your blood the way Tour de France?
I mean, those blast beats certainly reinvigorated my stream. I had a great time. Thank you. I went with Yasi and I went with Mantzoukas. So it was really fun.
That's really fun. I was obsessed.
The singer from Deaf Heaven,
with your weekend.
I think either greatly injured or tore his calf while playing, but absolutely you wouldn't know it watching him.
He sunk the free throws despite.
That's right.
Who had a better weekend, the singer from Deaf Heaven or
Phillip Rivers with a broken leg?
Fred Van Vliet or the singer from Deaf Heaven? Who was
Definitely
more him?
The singer from Deaf Heaven.
I'm just impressed. I'm just impressed that you are still finding the limits. You know what I mean?
I will say this, just since we're talking today, and we're now in minute whatever. I have reached this weird spot where if you have to wear earplugs when you're seeing Deaf Heaven.
Yeah.
But when you wear earplugs, unless you have the really great, some auditory doctor made it for me, it's a little, everything is a little underwater, and then you pull them out for a second and you're like, oh, I would be having massive brain hemorrhages if I had my earplugs out. And then you put them back in, they're like, oh.
So
and then you take them out. You're like, ah, and you put them back in. You're like, I can't really hear. So it was a very it was right there, but they were great. They were awesome. They played mostly Lonely People with Power, which is the new album.
Were you really focused on the drummer, or were you?
I was entirely focused on the drummer. This is drummer week for me.
This is really a new chapter for you.
I was watching everybody. It was a great vibe, but the drummer is just unbelievable.
And you weren't in the pit. You were never a pit guy, were you?
No, not really. Not really. I've worn glasses for such a long time. It's just not really something I want to find out what glasses in the pit are like.
I think because people in the pit are
I did see an older man in the pit. I think it was an all-ages show. And I saw an older guy wearing a neon green Aphex Twin t-shirt.
Yeah.
Just absolutely getting destroyed, but clearly loving it. And knowing all and I was just like, maybe I should be him, I don't have any kids I got to worry about. Making sure they're okay.
Was it a 45-year-old man or was it a 15-year-old on your friends and neighbors? What's up, fellow metalheads?
Deaf Heaven's combination of shoegaze and black metal sure gets me fired up.
But what do they think about capitalism?
All right, we'll wrap up. Obviously, we're going to be coming at you tomorrow with a special episode because we've got Andor returning tomorrow night.
And we've got
Tony Gilroy joining us. So we're really excited to share that episode with folks. We'll be talking broadly about the 3 episodes.
The first 3.
Yeah, that are airing tomorrow night. Obviously, with Andor, it's, everybody's on a different schedule in terms of watching 3 hours of TV But Tony spoke broadly about the season. I don't really find there to be a lot of spoilers in there. And we'll try to keep our conversation about the 3 episodes a little more light, and maybe we'll dive in more depth on Thursday.
Sure.
Great seeing you. Maybe we'll talk about all sorts of stuff on Thursday, but I just hope your kids finally open up their hearts to Matthew Sweet.
Maybe my dad will call in with a top 10 songs he didn't hate from 1994. Sting's Fields of Gold, he thought, spoke, echoed with sounds of English folk music. I think he liked that one.
Talk to you guys soon.